Okay, so I thought that we could start with some basics about hair. And all I have here is a plain object. And this is what you probably often do when you have hair, as you would. You have an object that you want to have hair on, and then you go to simulate, and then hair objects and add hair. So that does a couple of things. It adds a hair object here on our object manager, and it also gives us a material, a C4D hair material, as you can see here, and it also activates the hair render here in my render settings. So that's all working together so that we can render hair in any renderer pretty much. So that's the how you would create a hair objects. Now if I hit play here, you will notice that the hair starts to fall down, and that's because, as with pretty much any simulation object in Cinema 4D, it comes with gravity or dynamics activated. So for the most part, you will want to have that off in case you do have a lot of hair in your file and you by accident hit play here. You don't want to crash your system. So that's one of the things that I do right out of the bat, just disable the dynamics. And now if I hit play, obviously nothing happens. So one of the first things that I really struggled with when working with hair was actually seeing what this material is doing. And if I double click on this material, you can see that we have options for the color, the specular, but most importantly for how we stylize our hair. And what we're seeing here on the viewport is really just the guides of our hair. So think about this. Well, they are just guides that we see. Let me go to this view so we can see them a little bit better. They are really pretty much just guides for the hair, and this amount of guides is not really what renders in your viewport. So if I start the IPR here, you would see that we have a lot more hairs that we see on our viewport. And that's good because on one hand, we keep our viewport light and we can see we can just navigate through the viewport and everything is happening, like the heavy lifting is happening on the render end. But on the other hand, it's a little bit difficult to order direct what we are doing without actually, because we're not going to have the IPR going all the time. And to demonstrate that, I can actually add kink, frizz, and maybe curl. And then here, I'm just going to go to like crazy numbers here. And you can see something that's happening here if I open window. I really wish this was a little bit more interactive, but you can see that the hair is being affected by that, but we're not seeing any of that here in our viewport. Obviously, if I start my IPR, you would see, yeah, that already changes and it gives us an actual representation of our hair. So if I stop that, that's one of the first things that I wanted to touch on, because most people don't know about it, and I certainly did not. I discovered it when I was working on this commercial project I was talking about. We have two tabs here. So we have our guides, which is where we link our object that we want to create the hair on, and you can see that we can control how many guides we want to see on the viewport here. We have the guides here and the hairs tab. So if I go to my hairs tab, you can see that we have 50,000 hairs here. This one also has properties for roots and whatnot. For the most part, you will want to leave the roots on auto, because then you are handling your roots via the guides. And you can see that if I select these two here, we have pretty much like some of the same properties here. We have roots, growth. On the hairs, we have cloning, but we'll get to that in a second. But if you go to the viewport, here's where you can actually display what you see on the viewport without actually having to render. So if I go to hairlines, you see that we are actually seeing our hairs. And now if I activate here my frizz, kink, and my curl, now I'm seeing exactly what it's going to be rendered, and I can obviously navigate around and see everything here. Let me just change the color of this so we can see it a little bit better. Maybe let's go for like green hair. something like that. One thing to keep in mind is that most of these values that we see, yeah, that's a little bit better, easier to see. Most of these values are along the strand of hair. So this color here on the base would be the root of the hair, and then this color here is going to be the tip of the hair. If I disable all of this here, you can see that happening. And to just get my point across, if I change that, you can see that we are affecting each hair strand like that. So that's one of the things that I wanted to mention. You can enable here in your viewport. What I do usually is just drag this out here to my viewport, right click, show always, and then from here I can simply go to guides quickly or hairlines and change that. Now if you see here on the viewport, you also have a detail percentage. Obviously we are now seeing 25% of the total amount of hairs that we are going to render. So if I bring that to 100%, this is an actual representation. Like we are seeing here the 50,000 hairs that we are going to render, but that is going to significantly affect your viewport performance. So I would always recommend to keep this around 10%. Obviously, it depends on what you're doing. Right now, we're dealing with just a small patch like this plane here. So 50,000 hairs is pretty good for what we are seeing here. But yeah, you can really quickly just freeze Cinema with this here. So that's one thing. Just activate your viewport or your hairlines in the viewport to actually be able to art direct this, the way that your hair looks without having to go into rendering. So this curve here, obviously, let's talk about a little bit about the settings here. As you probably already know, if you're rendering with Redshift or with Octane, you control the stylization of your hair, like your thickness, length, kink, all of these values here. Can I select? Yeah, like all of these are controlled basically through this material here, but any color and reflections can be controlled on the actual renderers shaders. Like is in this instance, for example, for Redshift, you will control, you can actually leave this, like control the color and the specular from here and just do it like that. But they recommend to use actual Redshift hair or Octane hair or Arnold hair instead for controlling the specular, the transmission, the color, and so on and so forth. So the only thing that does not show in the viewport is the thickness, and you can see here, even if I change this to 100, which it's a little bit of a bummer. You can see an actual representation of that if you go to, I think it's hair polygons. You can see that here, but it's not really. If I bring it back to 0.1, it's not really a good representation. Well, I guess you could work with this. So if I go to like 0.005. You can actually see that there. Yeah, I guess you could use this, but as you can see, is like flat polygons here. But again, this is just a representation of what you would see in render, and I actually haven't tried this. Let me see. Let me save and see what shows in the IPR. I don't know if, yeah, okay. So yeah, it does drive also what you are rendering in the actual render. Let me stop here, and if I change this to just guidelines, it would probably render the hair. If I change it to hairlines, it should just render. Oh no, it's actually 0.26. Okay, so let me hide this from the view. Okay, so this doesn't seem to have any effect other than just previewing in the viewport. And yeah, that's just you can tell that I don't really mess with hair polygons that much. I'll usually just do hairlines or guides. So okay, so let me think. Like for basics, what else do we need to go on? Obviously you can change here under your guides. Anything that you do here on your guides, if your hairs are set to auto, your hairs are going to follow whatever's happening here. So if I change this to guidelines and change it to polygon center, now we are going to generate a, sometimes you need to kick it in the butt to update. Now we're generating one guide per polygon, and I think we're missing one here because we don't have enough, maybe. Yeah, we're actually missing a couple. So yeah, sometimes if your hair does not you know, update, like I'm gonna set it to polygon edge, and you can see that it's not updating. There's actually two ways that you can you know, make it update. If I select my hair, you just saw me doing it, you can hit reroute and it'll change the reroute. And these two are very important to remember because reroute is not really the same as regrow. And I'm going to show you an example of that. So if I go back to polygon area and say, or let's actually do something a little bit more organized, polygon center, obviously right now we are generating a count of 100, but I can go even higher and it's not going to give me any more hairs because it's based on the polygons, on the amount of polygons that we see here. So for that, I will have to increase my amount of polygons here. And as you can see, they did not update, even though, you know, this is set to auto update. Sometimes update guides can help. It doesn't help in this instance. So I'm going to hit reroute and it's going to crazy. Let me see. That's interesting. It shouldn't be, it should be giving me, oh, maybe I need more hairs now. Yeah, I think that's what it's it. Okay, so yeah, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but hopefully you get the idea. If you're going with polygon center, you need to, you know, they are controlled by the amount of polygons, but you also need to match that with the count. Let's go with like polygon area and actually make this a little bit easier on ourselves, and then hit reroute. And now we are growing 1500 hairs. Let's just go to like 15,000 hairs, and then you can see, maybe let's go to 8,000. I just don't want to have, because I'm recording and doing this, and sometimes that can freeze the machine. But anyways, what I wanted to show you is if I go to simulate, you can grab your hair selection tools and also your hair tools. These are going to be used quite a lot, obviously depending on what you're doing with hair. But what I was going or what I was going to talk about is the difference between these two, reroute and regrow. So if I grab my brush and I have it set to move, so I can actually, you know, control how this hair is, you know, obviously I'm doing a pretty bad job right now at this, but just want to get my point across. I am basically, you know, using the brush to comb my hair. And that's one thing that I also learned. You always have to have some sort of, you know, hairdo on the hair, if for lack of a better word. If you leave all of the hairs, like I was trying to do in the beginning, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, just straight up, they're not going to look good. And and in the beginning I was trying to like increase the amount of hairs to achieve that, but as soon as I started to like use the brush and do kind of like this stuff, then the hair started to look good. But okay, so what I was getting at is that if I change this now to, let's say I need it to be polygon vertex now, and I hit regrow, and I already went through all of this hassle of like combing my hair the way I want it, if I hit regrow, it's just going to grow everything again, and you're going to lose what you were doing. Whereas if I hit reroute, you can see that it is maintaining what I was doing before. Obviously right now we don't have enough resolution on our plane, like our source, to show us that amount of hair as well. But always keep in mind that if you're doing work with the hair and you already have it where you want, and for some reason you do have to change the count or something about your source object, in most cases, if you hit reroute, it's going to keep all of those changes. If you hit regrow, it's just going to grow the hair again and you're going to lose all of that. Another thing that you can also do is hit store here, and that is going to basically like save the state that you're currently in. So if I go and damage the hair right now and I want to go back, I don't need to undo. I can hit restore and it takes me back to that here. So if I go to polygon area, hit reroute, and maybe let's increase the amount of hairs because it went back to like a lower amount. And yeah, I can hit store here. You can see that it changed the amount of megabytes being used. I can do crazy stuff, and then I always have a place to go back to if I mess things up. From here, you can obviously, for the guidelines, it gives you a little bit of a guide of what the hair is going to be doing. If I switch it to hairlines, and okay, I need to click away, but I think that's because the hair color is pretty much the same of the guys. So let me reset to default, or I probably have too many guides right now. So let's go back to green. So this is another thing that I wish could be a little bit different. Right now, even though I have the display set to hairlines, it is showing me the hairlines, but since I have the hair selected, I can't really see the hair unless I click away from there. So if I go back to my hair and increase this to like 90,000 hairs, you can see that I can start to see what that's about. You can always reduce the amount of guides. So if I can go to like 20 guides, but it will never let you go to 0. And I think even if you go back down to 1, yeah, your hair is going to try to follow that one guide there. So it's recommended to try to keep some at least a good amount of guides in there. Let me see if I can restore. And yeah, it took me back to 250, or did it? Yeah. Oh, it was a kind of a bug. Like you can see that it's showing me the thousands of hairs that I had before, but if I go back and adjust that, I can keep my the hair that I was doing before, and low amount of guides, so I can see what's happening with the hair. So at this point, if I enable frizz and kink, it's going to show me what's happening there. And maybe this is a good opportunity to show that in most of these, the texture slot is for the source object and not really the hair. The curve is obviously from the root here to the tip. So I can actually decrease that there. Let me get a little bit closer. And so right now I am affecting less of the root of the hair with kink and more of the tip with kink. But if I scroll back and let's introduce here a noise, and for the sake of this being easier to see, I'm going to regrow my hair and increase the amount here to like 500. And according to the Maxon documentation, this is supposed to be affecting the source of the hair, so we shouldn't really be seeing all of the hair like being affected by kink. And I'm going to try to okay, so it is showing it here. If I increase the contrast, you can see that only like this part of the hair is being affected, but then the black parts are not. And if I increase the size of this noise, it's even more noticeable here. So you also have that at your disposal to use a noise or any kind of texture here to control that. And all of these settings pretty much have that texture slot. Most of the time, I think you will be playing with frizz, kink, and clump. And clump is very important. I'm going to go a little bit more over that when I show the rug that I was using. But you can see that as soon as I enable the clump and maybe go to like 60%, you can see what that's doing here. Obviously, right now the radius is too high, so I can decrease that and maybe increase the clump. So this count here controls the percentage of hairs around the one hair that are going to clump around that hair, and you can see how that is beginning to work. Obviously, there's too much variation here probably, or too low of radius. So if I go to like 5, you can see how that is affecting it. Now, if I grab my move tool, or not my move, my brush, and set it to move, you can set it to like 30%. This is usually what I do. And let me increase the size here. You can start to really affect the way that the hair is, is being seen. And this really affects how the hair looks and how organic it looks. But right now we're not really focused on how it looks, but rather on how to control this here. What else? I can increase this, or not that, but maybe let's add some twist. And if I add some twist there, you can see maybe if I go to my viewport and increase the percentage to like 60%, that should show me a little bit better how the hair is looking. And hopefully this is coming through for you. Obviously right now we're looking at the viewport, there's no shadows or anything, but if I disable the clump, you can see how it looks more like a, I don't know, like a sponge or something like that. Whereas if you start to enable the clump, it starts to look a little bit more organic. Obviously this needs a little bit more variation. So for example, we can hit the scale, and here's another tip that I learned in my explorations. The length actually cuts the hair. So let me show you. If I zoom in here, you can see that all of these hairs are being affected by our kink. If I enable the length and set it to like 40% of my length, you can see that it is actually cutting the hair, and we are removing that kink from the equation. Obviously, there is a little bit of kink here, but you can see that the hair itself, hopefully it's visible here. This curvature here is still there if I have my length off, but this craziness here does not. So your length actually cuts the hair. It doesn't really control how tall the hair is. Now with your scale, you can actually control how tall the hair is or how long it is. So if I set it to 20%, it's gonna go down, but it's still maintaining that kink along the hair strand. So I can actually throw here a noise, and maybe let's set it to like 30%. Or actually 90%. So some of these should be longer than others. But hopefully you get the idea. So with the scale, there's a variation here. So do I need to set this to 100? And then control 55%. Okay, there we go. So right now it is giving me 100% of the scale that I have set here in my guides, so 20 centimeters. And then depending on the black and white or the grays, is actually going down in scale. So if I go to 100% contrast, we're going to have some bold spots, and you know there's no transition between 100% and 0. And if I go to 0 here, then we're going to have more. It's just going to be less visible. But in any case, the point that I want to get across is the difference between length and scale. Length actually cuts your hair and gets rid of anything that you have here towards the tip, while scale will actually scale the hair strand. Obviously, I can control the length of my hair through here, so I can go to like 150, for example, or let's getting too crazy. Let's go to like 80, and maybe we hit reroute. So right now we are seeing 100% of that. But if I want to control the length through my shader, I can just hit it to 40%, or in this case, let's do like 9%, and we're going back to that. That seems a little bit counterintuitive. You have your guides that are super long, and you know it doesn't go with your hair, but just wanted to show you that that option is there. And then the rest of these options are really just for you know, exploring. I did try some of these, but in the end, what really worked for me was just frizz, kink, and clump. I think that's what gets you the best results. But I can show you really quick what this does. So let's go to like 3% of our guides, and then maybe come in here. I can show you not clump, but for example, the curl would actually curl the hair like this. So we can control how this is affecting, and you can probably use this for like really cool animations if you have just one hair or a few. And I can go to advanced and control how this is being affected. So I'm affecting more of the root here or less. So right now I'm controlling it and keeping it on the tip of the hair. Obviously, you also have control over the segments. Right now, it looks faceted because we don't have enough segments, but we can go to like 25 segments, and obviously that's going to get better. You also have the option to add more segments at render time, and I think you can do it here. Trace that with the tessellation. I don't think I need to. You can tessellate your hair in Redshift at least, you know, here at render time. But most of the time you're going to be far back, so it doesn't need to be, you know, use any of that. For twist, it's actually going to twist your hair like so. Let me disable this. And axis, let's do it to root. And you can see how that is affecting this. So most of these I find that are not very, like I was saying, intuitive. So yeah, I don't really use them. Like this wave, for example, is making the hair wavy, and you can control your scales and whatnot. But yeah, I don't really find these intuitive. So yeah, I invite you to, you know, just get a low amount of hairs in your viewport and play around with these to get the kind of look that you want. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about before going into the next stage of this video is the cloning. So if I go to cloning here, you can actually clone hairs depending on that one guide. So if I go down to like 20,000, but then clone it 4 times, you can actually see how that is cloning the hair. So this is also a good way to keep it low in the viewport and only add your clones when you're about to render. You can usually just keep it like this. And I think if I have a freeze and whatnot, you can see what's happening here. We're actually affecting just like, yeah, just groups of hair like that. And I can actually increase it. So you have that in your arsenal as well. All right, so let's get into business with the actual rug itself. This is some of the references that I found. and that inspired the video. I saw something also on Twitter of somebody asking to do this design here that we see, and I felt inspired to just try it on, for myself. So I found this one that we see here, and it was pretty interesting to me about the different lengths of hair, and I was thinking about how can I achieve that with, having the minimum amount of hair objects that you can have, and just try to get that. This one here was for mostly trying to get like the back part of the rug, but in the end just getting the actual rug itself working took too long, so I didn't even show that part. And then I also had an idea of like working on putting this rug in like a setting here, but again I just ran out of time. But yeah, so with this in mind, I went into Illustrator because I didn't want to make this geometry, although I'm pretty sure that you can, but I wanted to, try to achieve this with, for the most part with textures. So if I go to Illustrator here, and let me get this set up, I can open this file and I can show you all the maps that I created for this. So this is the main design of the rug, obviously heavily inspired by this one here and this one here with a big circle. But I did try to make it my own with some of the curves and whatnot, and the colors themselves. So I had that, and I knew that I was going to start with just a plain object, like you can see here from the artboard. It's like I think I did it like a letter size, and then just exported a 3K image out of it. And yeah, just trying to keep it simple. So I made this the first design, and then I created an alpha matte that I could start to generate the hairs from, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then the idea was also to try and make different hair lengths for these pieces here, and that's what these two maps are for. And also I was trying to make it just from one, and the reason why it's different shades of gray is because of what I was talking about before with the scale property in the hair material. Depending on the gray values, you can tell it to scale more or less, or not even scale at all. So yeah, I just started to do a few different maps that I could play around with. You can see in this one I was also trying to get different hair lengths in the this area of the rug, and then this one also for trying to isolate the hair that would go here on the white part versus on the circle here. So I took that, and obviously I didn't go into Illustrator knowing that I would do all of this. I started with my main design and my alpha matte here, and then from there I it was a lot of back and forth with adjusting, exporting, and bringing back into Cinema 4D for seeing how everything was going to turn out. So if I minimize this here and let me get this out of the way, this is the actual file that I used. So let's break it down here. As you can see, get out of my camera. If I go into here and let's just bring it to basics, I have a plain object, and it's simply just that, a plain object that I did again the same width and length as in my artboard. And I took that and I added a displacer just to get some flowing lines, some basic flowing lines in there. And then if I look at in the camera, and you can see here that we are cutting off this here, but because we're using an alpha matte, we're not really going to see that. And the way that I'm using the alpha matte, probably getting ahead of myself here a little bit, but if I go to the rug base and get the node editor here, you can see that in the sprite for the nodes I am using this alpha matte that I was talking about. So I don't know if I can do this anymore here. It doesn't look like it's going to show, but maybe if I enable this here, well, yeah, it's not going to show me the actual matte, but you can see the design here, and obviously we are going to cut off all of these parts here, and you'll see when I start Redshift. But I just connected the color to the color channel of the material, and then I used a couple of roughness and normal maps from one of the materials from Grayscale Gorilla, as always. And I have here a displacement that I didn't end up using because you know, there was just a lot of hair, so you wouldn't even see the displacement. But in case there was a little bit of a peek through the hair, I had a roughness and a normal map here, and I'll show you how that looks in a second. So after I had this base, I was playing around with trying to make this feel like it's flowing in the air. Obviously it's floating, so that's where the bend deformers start to come in. So basically just trying to get some bend deformers by hand, and using that to drive the bends on the rock here. So you can see that here I'm just using it to lift the corner here a little bit, and then this one to you know, bend it the other way around. And obviously this was only for a still image, so this type of approach technique works. In terms of the camera, I am using just a simple 55mm lens, and as always you can see that I have a plane attached to my camera, and we can't see it right now because of the layers. And if I can find them, my plane is back there. Let me go back to a regular view here. My plane is back there with a light, so I'm creating a little bit of a gradient there. I've done that quite a lot in my videos here, so it's just something that I like to do. Just set it to my camera, and my camera is always seeing at that plane. Okay, so I got all of that working. Not really sure what this linear field is doing. I don't think it's even, yeah, it's not being used here. So at some point probably I try to disable the displacer, but in terms of the displacer, nothing too fancy, just a turbulent noise, you know, set to 800, and just you know, set it to so that it feels like it's flowing in the air, and we're just getting a little bit of detail in there. What else? So let me just start Redshift so we can start to see this. And right now I have the hair disabled, and I am using a lot of hairs. Looks like I'm missing some materials. Oh, I'm running Octane. What the hell? Let me just get Redshift render view. There we go. And start Redshift. Give it a second. Okay, and let me look through my camera because there is a little bit of color going on there. So here you can see, if I disable, go to auto, you can see the, disable the same frames. The material that I'm using, it's basically just a little bit of a roughness and normal map there. But you can see how this is getting cut out nicely by the sprite. And you can also use the texture simply in an opacity map. But I've read and I've heard that whenever you're doing cutouts like this, it's better to use a sprite node and just drive the material through the shader here and load that in here. Apparently it's got something to do with the way Redshift calculates the alpha or something like that, but don't take my word for it. I'm pretty sure that just you know, driving that through the opacity would work the same. I just got used to doing it this way. So that's what I have for the material of the actual rug, as you can see. But you can see that it's looking very flat. So it's very thin, and it didn't look too well, and you'll see when I enable the hairs, or actually I should pull up the actual render. Hold on. Okay, so here's the actual render, and this is a little bit easier to demonstrate because I'm not going to be able to just like enable the render view over and over. There's a lot of hairs here. I think there's over 5 million hairs, but you can see that there's just a little bit of thickness that we are getting here, and I am getting that simply by enabling this thicken with these settings. And if I get a little bit closer, obviously it's a little bit hard to see without the render, but this is all that the thicken is doing, just adding a little bit of thickness. And because I do have the alpha, everything is following that, so just a little bit of thickness there. I can break down the lighting real quick just so that we can see it, or actually no, after this is loaded in the render view, it will be easier to see with the hair. So let me just disable or stop the render view, and let's talk about the hair a little bit. All right, so I have two hair objects here, and you can see hair main and hair circle. And again, this is because I am using the hair on this main part, like here, and then just the hair on this one. I did try, like I was saying, different lengths, but in the end, it was taking too long. I was already into like the 5th day of troubleshooting and working on this. So in the end, I decided to just leave it to 2 types of hair and just have different colors and whatnot for that. So in the main hair object, let me just try to make some more space here. If I enable that, you can see that, let me disable my fields and where is it? Camera deformers. It was right on top of it. And just for the sake of it, so that we see a clean slate here. Oh no, I think Cinema just, okay. It didn't die on me. Let me disable the work plane because it drives me mad. So you can see that we have hair here, and it is actually growing where I needed it to grow, and that's only being driven by the texture here in the growth. Now, as I was saying before, this is a little bit counterintuitive because we have the guide control and the hairs control, and if I go into the hairs, there's also another slot for a texture here. So I don't know. I can't really imagine a situation where you would want 2 different textures here, but that's just the way that it is. So that's why I just did a simple espresso tag here to drive one or the other. So if I change it in one of the slots, it becomes the other one follows. And I did that simply with just set driver and that set driven on the other one, and that was pretty much it. So I am using that black and white map here for the hair source. This is the length that I'm using, 0.89, and I have 50,000 guides here in the hair. And the way that I achieved this, I'm gonna do a little bit of another demo in a second, but the way that I achieved this was just a lot of brushing with the brush, as I was showing before. Very low intensity, and just trying to drive the hair where we want it. And I'm going to show you how it looks with the hairs just like straight up. For the root, I have it set to polygon area, and I have my growth set to my normals. I think this thing, if you store it, I think when you save the file in a different location, it goes away. It should, I remember I had stored it when I was working on this, but since I saved this for the demo as a separate file, I think it lost it. But yeah, I just hit store there so I can go back to it if I needed to. And yeah, same thing as before. I have my display set to guidelines here, but if I set it to hairlines, you can see here that my detail is set to 15% because in my hairs, I have 600,000 hairs, but I am cloning it twice. So 600,000 times 2, you can do the math. It's over 1 million hairs just for this one section here. So if I enable my hairlines, I think this one here is for the hair circle. It's going to take a minute to load it, but you can see what's happening here. And I'm actually going to go to the hairs and just set this back to 0 so we can see even at 15% how much it takes. But here you can see that it even drives the color, and the color obviously is coming from, if Cinema doesn't freeze on me, hopefully not. There's something going on with Octane here. I don't know why. There's no Octane stuff happening here, so that's weird. But let me grab my C4D hair main, and I have obviously I have a C4D hair material for each one of the hairs, so I can, I have control over all of that. So you can see here in the color, it's going to be pretty much the same for the circle, but you can see here in the color tab that I didn't even change the gradient here, but I did go into the roots and I loaded that color map here. And the tips is always going to be set as roots, so that's why the hair is being colored by that texture that that we loaded there. And you can actually see, so this that you see here where it's missing, you can see it. Yeah, it just popped up again. It's like a bug in Cinema where when you have too many hairs, and depending on the angle that you view it, some of those hairs just seem to go away in the viewport, but then they come back. The hairs are there and they do render. So what else am I doing here? I am using a thickness of 0.2 and then 0.008 for the tips, so it is a little bit thicker at the root and then getting obviously thinner at the tips. And as you can see here, I didn't even use the kink. Take my word for it, I did try most of these, and this is what got me to this final section, because in the end I wanted this to look I tried to get it to look like this, but I wasn't able to get that kind of look, so I went for more, or for something more fluffy like this, and that's what you see here. Hopefully it looks like a rug, but yeah. So I am using frizz, and you can see here that I am affecting less of the root because I moved the point here in the graph, and I am using a little bit of noise to not have the same amount of frizz applied everywhere. I did set the texture to 90% scale and then 20% in the contrast. I think for the most part I left this as default, or probably maybe not. I did change it to 50% and 50%, and this is not numbers that you can just apply these numbers and you'll get this result. It's just something that you have to play with and see how it looks for you. But again, what really did change everything for me was when I applied the clump. If I don't apply the clump, as you can see here, it doesn't look bad. Like you can kind of see here, it doesn't look bad, but I think with the clump, it makes it feel more organic. And this is something that I played with a lot in my exploration. And, going back and forth with learning about all of these settings and whatnot, and then trying different settings and, just getting to a point where it was looking good. Honestly, the thing that took me the longest time was just to use the brush and actually comb the hair, because when you do use that brush, the hair guides get longer or shorter, so you end up with longer patches or shorter patches of hair. I wish that wasn't the case, but that's just the way that it works. So let me show you the circle. It's pretty much the same. And for some reason, I think, let me hit reroute here. Yeah, you can see there that it was showing everything, and I hit reroute and I didn't lose this thing here. So that's a good tip to keep in mind. But yeah, it's pretty much the same as before. I am using texture to drive where the hair grows. I have a count of 30,000 guides just to make sure that I can see what the brush was doing. And then for the hairs, I have 350,000 hairs cloned twice. And let me bring this back in, but maybe disable it from the viewport because it takes a while to show. Okay, so for the hair circle, I'm pretty sure that I just duplicated that, and I am using the same texture for the color, just a little bit of a different, is it a different thickness? No, it's the same thickness all throughout. I did play around with that, different lengths, different thickness of hair, but in the end, yeah, I just started to go with the same thickness. And I think, yeah, these are pretty much all. There's a little bit of less frizz here, I think. Oh no, it's the same exact material. So I'm pretty sure that I could probably have used just the cinema for the hair mane for both. But hey, I did try a lot of stuff and ended up just leaving it like that. Okay, so I think that covers that, and then we can go into C4D and show you. I'm gonna load this into the render view and I'll be back. Okay, so here we are, and of course Cinema did crash, and it takes a good 2 to 3 minutes for this to actually load in the render view. But the good thing is that once it loads, it's pretty fast. One small tip that I did find when working with this, especially because there's so many hairs in this, again, over 2 million hairs in this render, is enable your geometry, freeze geometry updates. That allows you to, not change anything here and have Redshift try to reload the scene, by chance. So I can actually move around here, and you can see if I change this to auto, it does keep up within reason, but it does keep up with the render. So let's talk about the lighting here. So let me drill this down, because we already talked about how I built the hair, and I'm going to show you real quick how I used the brushes before I end the video. I'm going to show you how I used the brush to comb like these hairs here. So let's start with the top. Or actually, let's start with, the background. So the background has a pretty simple plane with a material that's only diffuse, and I have a Redshift area light set to disk, and I have it set back there. Let me see if this is enabled, and it's not visible right now, but you already saw that. Nothing too fancy, just creating a little bit of a gradient in the background. So besides that, we do have the main light source, which is a spotlight. And in this spotlight, I am using another one of the GSG Gobo textures, and I can show you how that is being affected here. And I'm actually, I think, yeah, let's go into this one, because I was quiet for a second because I was looking at this and I was thinking, but I did change the location of the spotlight, and yeah, the lighting overall was looking a little bit weird to me, but that's because I used takes for my wide and my close-ups, so I did change the lighting a little bit. So let me go to the default camera here, and let me try to just make sure that I'm not recording anything. And in the takes, let me disable this here and enable the spotlight again, so that we can see what that is contributing to. So the spotlight is just being angled from this side, and I have a target so that I can obviously move my light and try to get that there. This one snapped because of the take, but yeah, we have a spotlight there, and then I have a key here, or a rim light, that I have pointing down from behind the carpet, and I can show you real quick what that is doing. Just like filling out the details there a little bit more from the spot, and I'm doing that because I want to get more specular highlights here in the hair. Besides that, we have another rim light back here just to get some of that, again, just rim light here. And for all of these, I'm not doing anything too special. I am controlling the spread because that's something that just is insanely helpful here in Redshift. Just controlling the spread of that light and toning it to do what I want, which is just like highlight this here so that we can get more of that curvature. We have a fill light down here that's behind or below camera that's just filling this out a little bit, and I'll show you how that looks without that fill. And just another fill light to get more highlights here because I felt like it was getting a little bit too dark in those spaces. And other than that, I just have a dome light here with one of the GSG's Creative Studios, low saturation, and then just played around with the let me just show you, just played around with the rotations so I can get a little bit of fill light in the overall rug, and also on the background a little bit. So the top light, I don't think that I was using this one, and that's why it has an underscore, because I use this plugin here, Light Solo. So when you have that, it's not going to be affected by that. So I think I can just well, actually I won't delete it, but I don't think I was using it. So all together, let me show you the main lights, and then the fill light here, and the fill light around here on this area. So you can see that we are getting how did I get, okay, yeah. So you can see that I'm trying to enable my drawing tools in my recording. There we go. So we are getting some nice shadowing here, which is giving us the sense of the curvature on this circle here. So bright spots, shadow, and then another bright spot here, and the same here. So we are getting some really nice bright spots, and then some areas with shadow, with which help define the shape a lot more. And then this is without the fill light that we see here. So you can see that this area here where the thickness is very dark. So that's why I have this fill light to just fill that in a little bit. And actually, I don't think I can show you without having to restart the render, and that's going to take a while. But yeah, the thicken really helps the sense of this being more like a rug and not just like a very thin piece of paper. And then here you can see how in this area it was getting very dark, so that's why I just added another fill light disc with low opacity and low exposure, and that's just helping fill in the light a little bit there. And that's that for the lighting. So let me show you real quick about the actual texture of the hair, because that's like I was saying, that's controlled by the Redshift hair material. So we have the hairs for C4D that's controlling the stylization of the hair, frizz, and all of that. And then we have, let me see, because I have two here. Let me material, edit, delete unused. Okay, it's probably just stuff that I wasn't using. So if I enable my hair here, I am using the Principled hair shader, and you can see that I was trying some stuff. So let's just delete this and this one. I was also trying to use the old hair material, but that one is deprecated or depreciated. I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's not the one that you're supposed to use anymore. So you're supposed to use the Principled hair shader, and when you go into create materials and you go to hair, where is it? principal is now the principal hair. So all that's doing is just getting the cinema 4D attributes and controlling the tint and the albedo from the color. So if I can use this here, so we can use this bar here in the principal hair shader. You can see that we have a tint and color for the albedo. And if you're doing human hair, you wouldn't want the albedo to be all the way up to 1, but because we're doing pretty much a ROG and not real human hair, I am driving the color out of the C4D material into the principal hair shader, and that's giving me that there. So the albedo mix is all the way set to 1, and obviously I'm not going to go into specifics about the principal hair shader. I think I'm going to do another video about that with actual real human hair, but you do have melanin and melanin redness, and that's how you would control how blonde or how dark the hair is with those values. But if you want to drive just color through your hair, you can use the albedo mix, and in this instance I am using a texture, so I did have to use set that all to 1 and override these values here. These values down here are for variation, and this controls obviously the variation. If you have melanin or melanin redness, you have some variation here, and roughness as well. I did play around with the roughness variation, but in my case, because I wanted to have more of a ROG like this, it didn't look good to keep it, so I didn't use any of that. And down here you also have a diffuse contribution, which I think just makes everything more diffuse, but I didn't really use that. And even in the documentation for Redshift, they say to try to not use this whenever possible, because it's not it doesn't yield realistic results. So for the variation, I left everything default. In the end, I just used the albedo mix for driving the color of the hair and the tint of the reflection. And if I disable this, you can see that the tint is being now, or the color of the reflection is being driven by the specular here. Even though it's not on, it's going to default to white, and obviously that's not good. You can try to, if I go here and copy shader, and I don't know if this is gonna work, but I think I tried it at some point. But yeah, this doesn't really give me very good results. So in the end, I just drove the tint from the actual texture itself here. And then last but not least, I did play around with the roughness and the roughness radial. The way that I understand it is that this roughness here is the roughness along the hair strand, and then this roughness is the roughness around the hair strand. So pretty much just put values in until I saw something that looked good, and yeah, I just went with that. Everything else I think I left default, and then I got this result here that you see. So that's that for the materials. I know that this video is running a little bit long, but hopefully you're getting good tips from this one. I did want to show you, let me just get a snapshot. I did want to show you how this looks without the hair just being combed, and I think that's going to mean I need to for the sake of the tutorial, I'm just going to disable this hair. Obviously it went away, but if I try to enable it again, because I have my geometry updates frozen, it's not going to do it. So I'll show you here, and let me just save just in case. I'll go to the editing and hit regrow. So yeah, you can see that it doesn't really update here. So I'm going to pause here and I will reload the scene. Okay, and we are back here, and yeah, you can see how boring this looks with just this. Right now, all of the hairs are just straight on their normal, and obviously it is using the frizz and the clump. I'm not going to uncheck it because it's going to take a while to reload, but you can see the difference that it really makes to have the hair flowing in some different directions. I I really thought that using frizz, kink, and all of these different things with a noise and just affecting the hair in general would create effects like this, but it turns out that it doesn't. You really have to manually do it there, unless there's some sort of like simulation with wind or something that I'm not aware of. But this is the way that I was able to solve it, and I'm going to show you now how I used the brushes, but in the end just frizz clump and just brushing the hair to give it that some places where the hair is not standing up straight, because otherwise it just looks like this, which feels like a fake grass or something like that. Okay, so let me pause this here and let's talk about real quick, just about to end this video. Let me grab my tablet mouse here, or pen, hide all of this so it's easier to see. So this is the way that I did it. I'm not sure if this is the best way to do it, but it's the way that I solved it. So I got my selection and my tools here, and obviously rinse and repeat for the hair circle. Once I had my hair guides in the place where I wanted them, and I'm just gonna reduce the amount of guides for the sake of the tutorial. Let's do 10,000 guides. There we go. Once I have my hair looking the way that I wanted it, I can go to my brush, and just another unintuitive thing about this: if you have it set to move, the strength from 1 to 100, it really affects it. Like if I have it on 100 and brush, look how much the hair is being stretched, and not even just stretched, but going all the way down. So the best way, let me go back to my main take so it doesn't keep doing that. The best way to mitigate that I found is just to use very low values for just using the move tool, and then just going in and slowly trying to create those flows of the hair. And let me just increase this here so you can see how brushing all of this. And again, when you brush your hairs like this, you're not just affecting their curvature, but you're actually stretching the hair. Like if I go to this view, for example, and then go up, you can see how that's stretching the hair. So if I were to render this now, this patch would be insanely high versus everything else. So there's not really a way, not one that I found, to control to make the brush just affect the curvature and keep all of the lengths the same. And then this happened to me a lot. So the solution was to, for example, if I wanted to, brush this like so I can have a little bit of that, I can use command or control, or not that, but maybe just point it down, or change my brush from move to or not that, but use the cut tool and then just cut it here like that. But as you can see, it's a lot of trial and error. Another thing that really helped was setting the brush to scale, and this is what I'm talking about, the move having like insanely different values. If I set this to 100% and scale, you'll see how little these things scale, and they're set to 100%. Here I can actually hold Control or Command, and it would scale down back again. But it really depends on your angle. Like right now you can see that all of these are not scaling the same. But yeah, it was a lot of setting this to move, maybe like 20%, grabbing a big brush like this, and maybe just like combing the hair, trying to not make the hair super long. Like for example, here it looks like the hair became a little bit short. So I would go and grab my scale tool, or my scale brush, and then set it to like 500% so I can get faster feedback. And then just do it by eye, trying to make it, you know, overall the same, and then go back to, if I leave it at 500, it just goes crazy. So low values for the move tool, maybe just comb the hair towards the edges so that it, you know, sticks out a little bit. That was pretty much how I did it. This section of the process did take a long time because I would brush, load everything into Redshift, and I would see some weird stuff. Oh, and actually I think I have some renders. Let me double check here. Boop, boop, boop. Output, no, season for the, let me go to flowing rug, because I have it in a different place. Oh yeah, I can show you here, not this one, but the dev. Yeah. So I did save some of my process images, and you can see here how here I had all of the hair just sticking up completely without brushing anything, and it doesn't look bad, but it just looks unnatural to me. Here I was trying to adjust the specular of the hair, and obviously I am missing a lot of hairs here, so this is where I started to realize that I needed to pull up the count quite a lot. And then this is what I'm talking about. After brushing, you would get like these bumps and places where, like here, you can see how this is like just weird. Like, and I will have to, after waiting the 3 minutes for this to load into Redshift, go back, adjust the hair guides, because yeah, I wouldn't be able to have all of these hairs on the viewport and do it at the same speed. So you would have to just trust the guides, and yeah, it was a lot of like waiting. Pretty much, yeah. This is another one where I was trying to use the, I think it's the repel. Yeah, this one here, which repels, like makes the hair move out of that center. And I tried that for a little bit, and come on, and it gave me this result. So yeah, well, it was an exploration, so I did learn a lot, but here I think is where I started to use the brush and comb the hair, and you know, realize that this was probably the way to go for this to look somewhat decent. But yeah, a lot of trial and error. I think that's about it to wrap it up. Obviously, there's other tools here. I didn't really use any of this, but you can actually clump your hairs manually, and this one works with hair selections. So if I select a piece of hair, I can actually go and clump that piece of hair. This makes it a little bit more difficult to control. Same with the curl, like I can curl the hair in this section here, and even the push. I'm not really sure what this one is for, but I guess it pushes the hair along the surface. But yeah, in short, brush, move, a lot of move and a lot of scale, and even smooth. If you use the smooth, make sure to go high in the, let me deselect, go high, and yeah, that just will make it smooth, but that's just along the strand. If I wanted to bring this back to where it was, I will use the strengthen tool and just brush, and that this is set to selected only and visible only. So these ones are for cinema, they're going under the plane, and yeah, but you can see how now that's not the same length. But yeah, in the end, a lot of manual work, but I think hopefully Yeah, well, for me the results are worth it, and this feels fluffy and like a rock like I wanted to. So yeah, I think that's one of the longest videos that I made here on Patreon. And as a bonus, I am going to make this file available, obviously minus the Grayscale Gorilla textures, but you'll be able to download it if you want and just take a peek inside. And yeah, I hope as always that you all guys have learned something from these videos. I appreciate you all for being here, and stay tuned because obviously I will be doing more stuff for you guys. Thank you so much, and yeah, we'll see you around.